kind of in between the states, so between.
So this identification that you are releasing, how does that feel to you? What is the quality of that identification that?
And I realized, no, it's just the voice.
Uh-huh.
And I'm not behind the voice, it just happens. Sometimes.
The very subtle business we're engaged in here, Lana. It is Lana, right? Yes. Because these qualities that you identify of being irritated or unhappy about something or reacting to something, those qualities, of course, are really Lana. Your personality, your character, all of those things, your DNA, all of that combined comes together to produce a particular experience, a reaction in the moment. And it can be painful, can be unpleasant and difficult, for sure. And the normal impulse is to want to be free of that, of course. But in this teaching, this living teaching of Advaita that I talk about, we make a distinction between these very human qualities and characteristics and a kind of subtle secondary involvement in those things, which is this voice that I should not be this way. I should be more spiritual. I should be more observing and not, I should be less involved and more of this, more of that. I should be other than I am. That's the bottom line. I should be other than I am in this moment. That's the voice. And that is what we're pointing to very specifically in this teaching. That secondary involvement. And it's difficult. And that subtlety is unimaginably difficult to distinguish between the two, because it claims you. This sense claims the action and the response. And so the identity is indistinguishable from it. So here, the spotlight, the focus is on recognizing that there are actually two things going on. There's the primary response, however unpleasant or difficult it may be. But it is the secondary response, or the secondary involvement, which brings the suffering. And so we make a distinction between the pain of the moment and suffering. And there is a quantum difference between pain and suffering. So in this teaching, pain is simply acknowledged as being part of life. It's the other side of pleasure. If you're going to have pleasure, you're going to have pain. There's no way around that other than to die or drink a fifth of scotch and pass out, or whatever, the formula that you come up with to obliterate the pain. If you're alive, the pain will be followed by pleasure and vice versa. But the suffering can be reduced, and it can disappear and not a rot. That is possible. And that is what we're essentially concerned with here. Attractive, you're certainly more than welcome.
Definitely. periods are quite long and they quite pleasant. Fortunately, it comes back in. It seems like intruder in my head.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know how much of Ramesh's teaching that you were able to connect to through videos and other things as well, but he called this the flip-flop.
Yeah.
And it, I think, a very apt description. When you're flipped, it's wonderful. There is that spaciousness and that openness. And when you flop, the constriction and that sense of isolation and independence can be very strong and very unpleasant.
Avoidance and bypassing that's happening.
Yeah.
It like there is a flatness to the emotions.
Mhm.
There are highs and lows. It's not there anymore.
Mhm.
And it's good, it's healthy on one side, and on the other, it's like, okay, but what's really going on here? Yeah, there's happiness is not itself the same, but there's no more like devastating sadness either.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, this whole question of bypassing is very interesting to me, because implicit in it, what I hear in it is I'm doing something wrong. I shouldn't be bypassing. I should be witnessing all the time, or whatever it is I should be doing, but I shouldn't be doing that. And that I am ultimately responsible once again for this difficulty. And I hear that pretty loud in that notion, often, as it's expressed. And my perspective on this is that you are not actually using the teaching. The teaching is using you. And so, yes, there may be all kinds of peculiar responses, and ones that other people will judge harshly, and maybe even you would judge harshly, about it not being very pretty, and it's not being very attractive, and it's not very spiritual, and it's not this, and it's not that. There's all of those judgments that come in. But the fact is, this is what is happening as part of the functioning of totality, as Ramesh calls it, of the universe. You doing this, you being interested in the first place, you being drawn to the teachings, you doing whatever it is that you are doing in relation to this spiritual work, all that's happening. And you may have noticed by talking to your family that most people are not interested in this. They don't. This is not something that is of common interest, and yet you may well be passionately involved and concerned. But the point being, you haven't made yourself this way. And with that remembrance, with that recognition, often comes a kind of relaxation. A lack of having to worry about, am I bypassing? Am I doing this right? Am I, not witnessing properly? Am I, all of these kinds of concerns and considerations diminish of their own in the scene. Way of reconnecting to a much more fundamental kind of on a good day. And what is your name?
I'm CJ.
CJ. Hello, CJ. Have we met before?
No, not in person.
I see. Have you been online or?
Yeah,
I see.
yeah. I've been enjoying your teachings for a little while now.
Uh-huh. About how long would you?
Well, you know, about 6 months ago, Lana and I met, and before that, I was minding my own business in a Zen practice, you know,
Mhm.
grooving along as I had been for a few decades, and then she showed me.
A disruptive force
Yes.
entered your life.
That's right. That's right.
Yes.
And I was like, what's this Advaita stuff? I could have a flip-flop tattooed on my forearm at this point, you know.
Uh-huh.
That's definitely where I am.
Sure.
And but
I mean, I would say that that is the state of every spiritual seeker.
Yeah.
The flip-flop is simply a condition of that
yeah,
condition.
yeah. Really working on recognizing I don't have any real control over it, but I'm hopeful that I can accept what is
Mhm.
in a more full way.
Mhm.
And it for work, I'm a therapist, and my thing has impacted the way I hold space with clients too.
How has that altered that?
Well, really zeroing in on the false sense of authorship and saying, hey, you know, I think it's made me better at my work, basically. My impression anyway.
Uh-huh.
So I'm grateful for that. And general, my sense is that there's less suffering occurring with me. Spots feel a little bit fewer and quieter, I guess,
Mhm.
perhaps.
Mhm. But desires are naturally arise, and
Of course.
when you hear that there is the possibility of the total absence of suffering,
Uh-huh.
that to desire that seems to me, on my hierarchy of desires, would be pretty far up there.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, so that's quite natural.
I was just really looking forward to getting a chance to meet you in person.
What part of the city do you live?
I live in East Hollywood.
Uh-huh. Are you in East, do you live together, or you, no,
No.
are you in East Hollywood as well? Or?
We're in Calabasas.
Ah,
So it's a long distance relationship.
Yeah. In Los Angeles, Calabasas and East Hollywood is considered a long distance relationship, yes.
Depending on the time of day.
Yeah. Well, I was born and raised in the valley, so you have my condolences. And what is your name?
My name is Amir.
Amir?
Yes.
Have we met before, Amir?
Never. This individual yesterday on my right side here,
Yes.
just by chance, and he did in non-duality and in different spiritual traditions in general.
Uh-huh.
So I love learning from masters, from highly, you know, enlightened individuals. So he had mentioned that he sees you you have a meeting that you hold. So I was very interested in the teaching in general.
I see. So in these various non-dual teachings that you've encountered so far, what has been attractive to you about that?
What is not to like about it? It's just
Well, some people can't stand it, actually. What's not to like about it is that there's no personal responsibility. There's no personal authorship. There's no opportunity to make it happen from your own power. I mean, people hate that. So there's a lot not to like.
there's a lot not to like.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I would say that if you were I find myself receiving thoughts that or emotions that I'm just a vessel for,
Uh-huh,
in which if I act upon it as soon as I receive it, the consequence may be different than what it should be. So that's
I don't understand.
so what I would say is thoughts are they happen to us, and if we let them happen to us, then that's how the totality should work. Or that's how totality works, is thoughts enter us as if they're waves, and
Yeah.
we do the thoughts, and that's how, so that's the answer to the question.
Okay, but is there any possibility of our not doing that?
Why would I not?
Um,
It's controversial, very
It's
controversial.
very controversial. That's for sure.
Very controversial. On the one.
We act, we do things. These actions are part of, quote, an effect in terms of the story we tell about existence. But yet they're not directly causal. So we are left with the fact that we do stuff, we get stuff, and we have the capacity to observe patterns. This is what I think is so fascinating about humans, is that we have this highly developed capacity to observe patterns. And so we use that as a tool, so to speak, often, much of the time, for making decisions and choosing, selecting things. It's like, okay, when I put my hand in the fire, it burns. I get pain. And you learn, you observe the pattern. That every time I do this, I get this. Maybe next time I won't do that and I won't get the burn. That's a very fundamental and useful kind of capacity for human beings. And in a variety of much more subtle ways, that's what we do. Patterns of things. That where it gets really funky and often gets very controversial is when these patterns are taken to be truths. This is how it is. The example I sometimes use is that of the light switch. You flip the light switch and the light goes on. And you observe that when you do that, that happens. And you can then teach this pattern to your children or someone. Say, if you want the light to go on, press there and the light goes on. It's a very useful pattern. Right up to the moment that you push it and the light doesn't go on. If you believe that pushing the light switch causes the light to go on, and it doesn't happen, you are totally screwed. Because all you can do is sit there and keep pushing the switch. Because wait, this causes this, it's supposed to, it should, but it doesn't. Quality of pattern recognition that we're concerned with in living life, human life. Yes, we recognize patterns and things, but when we mistake those patterns for the truth and say, I know this will happen because of this, you're on very, very thin ice. And a lot of human suffering, it results from this very fundamental mistake. or misconception. You don't know. You don't know if flipping the switch will turn the light on. We don't know that if killing someone will result in our incarceration. We don't know. We don't know what the result of any action will be, even though we say we think we do. So what this results in is a very fundamental kind of humility. I don't know. I don't know what is going to happen. I think I do. I make plans. I'll do all the rest of it on the basis of I think I know, but underneath that is the space of not knowing. And that keeps everything in movement. That keeps everything fluid. As soon as you know, everything becomes solid. Everything is restricted. Everything is rigid. And life isn't that way. It's just not. Life is fluid. It's the very basis of it. So we are then in a kind of harmony with life, with the recognition that we don't know.
It come from the same Sufi tradition,
Yes.
and we had the same enlightened sheikh who died in 2011, and he gave prophecy that there will be no enlightened sheikhs in tradition after that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's why.
We shut down that business, didn't we?
And
Wouldn't agree with that claim.
no, the business is still going, but with no living teaching, unfortunately. Yeah, and what's gonna happen? Right?
Yes.
The way I see it in Sufi tradition, they always say, Inshallah,
Yeah.
God willing.
Yeah.
Whatever happens, they say Inshallah. We
Yes.
don't know.
Absolutely. And in Christian tradition, in classical tradition, Christian tradition, they say God willing. Same thing. And people say it automatically and don't give it an iota of thought of what that means. It's just a linguistic turn of phrase. But in its essence, it is precisely that. I don't know. It is up to God. It is up to the universe whether that happens. See you tomorrow, inshallah. My intention, my desire is that we'll see each other tomorrow. But it is the recognition that we don't know. So, like so many things in traditions, the essence leaked out a long time ago, for the most part. But it was, it's still there. It was of course it's still there. But the practice of it, the recognition of it in general is often lost. Well, yes and no. We talk about causation, but Ramesh's take on causation was multi-leveled. So in general speak, he would talk about causation in the form of a painting that's 50 miles long. in which everything that happened is inscribed. And he said, it's all there. And what we say is that this caused this because this came after this. He said, but we could look at it the other way too, that just as readily, that in order for that to happen, that had to happen. But his much more sophisticated imagery, which was taken from the Indra's net, was what he called the net of jewels, which he said that the universe is uncaused, like a net of jewels, in which each jewel is only the reflection of all the others in a fantastic interrelated harmony without end. So each jewel is only the reflection of everything else. Nothing has any independent existence. This was that model. And so we can still talk about this causing that by drawing an arbitrary circle around two things. But what those two things are is a reflection of everything else. So you have both this very useful notion of cause and effect, meaning I flip the switch, the light goes on. That's a limited and useful notion, but it's not a useful notion at all for understanding the nature of the universe, which is this limitless totality, which is incomprehensible. Literally, incomprehensible. So if you want to comprehend something, you have to draw limits. Then you can comprehend.
But at the same time, they are one. Because one contains infinity in a sense. Is that also limiting or identifying it and putting like a finger to it?
Yes. And that is why this teaching is called Advaita, which means literally not two. It is not called oneness. It is not two-ness. That opens the door to the infinite, so to speak. But the minute you say it's part of the oneness is something. Now, for language purposes, we do that. We call it source, unity, God, Allah, totality, consciousness, and for practical purposes, when we're writing, we can make it very easy because we capitalize it. So everything that's capitalized means that, or points to that. But normal day-to-day speech, we don't have that advantage. So when we talk about one, we don't know whether it's the capitalized one, which doesn't mean the singular one, or the singular one with the small.
Returning to the cause and effect,
Yes.
the scientific approach works very well in secluded, controlled environments.
Yeah.
If you can create a lab, controlled, secure environment with limited scope, but it's separate from the rest, then you can clearly see the cause and effect in the controlled environment where you control everything.
Absolutely.
But as soon as you expand the scope to infinity, then it doesn't work.
Yes. But the line, this controlled environment, is imaginary. It's not actual. The controlled environment, the quote called controlled environment, is not in the slightest bit controlled. It's part of the universe. And stuff creeps in,
Yeah.
anomalies creep in.
Yep.
They do,
Yep.
because this is an artificial structure that
Yes,
space
yes.
in which you have these controlled causal and fixed effects doesn't actually exist. It kind of does.
Mm.
In the same way, it kind of does that when you flip the light switch, the light goes on. That's a controlled environment. A lot of the factors that would affect that have been engineered out,
Mhm.
but not all. Can't. I mean, it's because there is no controlled space anywhere in the universe. The universe is not a controlled space.
To scientists, what they know about the environment.
Yeah. Mhm.
And their knowledge is limited, and I agree, there is always uncertainty, and they calculated uncertainty, yeah, they call it error rate. When something unpredictable happens, they call it error rate. And sometimes they have a lot of knowledge, and that uncertainty is very small.
Yes.
And then they have limited knowledge, then uncertainty is very high.
Yes. That is a good description of the phenomenal universe.
Error rate with the capital E.
No, I can't hear you, Maria. I'm in the English channel. Hold on, let me switch. I can. Get rid of your cat? I imagine if you get rid of your cat, the feelings will go along with it. I'm afraid I have no practical advice for you, Nikita. Yes, Stanislav.
Такая проблема. Я вот когда слушаю вас про то, что сейчас говорили, что мы не знаем, что произойдет, и на самом деле мы не знаем, как бы, что происходит, вот, ну или почему оно происходит. Вот. У меня как будто появляется какое-то ощущение такой, типа как апатии. Ну, как будто надо сесть и вот так, типа, ну, мы не знаем, что происходит, мы не знаем, что произойдет, все тлен, как бы делать ничего не нужно.
Very common. Very common indeed. But the teaching itself is pointing you to the fact that it is happening, Stanislav. This is happening. All around you, as you. It's happening. It's a miracle. You're breathing. Your blood is carrying oxygen to your brain. You have thoughts. You have emotions. You have this world around you that is pulsing with activity and vibrancy. It's all happening. It's all here. It's all going on. And that's what the teaching is pointing to. Your mind's going, well, if I'm not in control of this, nothing means shit. And it's all worthless, and what's the point anyway? And it completely obscures the miracle of what is in this moment. Look, you're sitting there on the other side of the world having this conversation. Think about this for a minute, Stanislav. We don't even share a common language, and yet we're communicating. There is this connection. Is this not the most miraculous thing you can, I mean, go show this to somebody, guy in the rainforest. And he would go, this is the gods. This is unbelievable magic. This couldn't possibly be. And yet here we are.
Окей. Я подумаю над этим. Ну, то есть, да, мне в том-то и дело, что мне казалось, что это, ну, типа, как странная реакция, потому что, с одной стороны, я вроде понимаю, что, ну, вот этот фактор непонятности и неподконтрольности, он вроде должен, ну, как бы делать все живее и удивительнее. А с другой стороны, какая-то часть меня такая, типа, ну, все. Вот. И, в общем, это странно.
Absolutely. That is absolutely what is happening. Or that is absolutely part of what is happening.
Спасибо большое.
Пожалуйста. Yes, Alexei.
Здравствуйте всем. Мария, огромное спасибо вам за перевод. Очень голос у вас приятный. Вы, пожалуйста, не уходите от нас. Слышно? Нет? И Уэйну огромное спасибо за поддержку. Трансляции очень помогают вот как раз растуманивать это пространство и видеть вот более, скажем так, ясно, насыщенно божественный какой-то свет. Вопрос такой, как растуманивать, вот что интересует. То есть, что сделать, чтобы эта пелена вот этого чудесного ну, поскорее уходила. Потому что многие практики, я не знаю, они работают, многие не работают, но все равно пелена по-прежнему присутствует большее время, скажем так. Ну, когда в медитации находишься, да, она спадает, и действительно это океан вот этого божественного. Но вот в повседневной жизни это присутствует, и действительно, Уэйн, огромное спасибо вам за этот пример. Вот эта затуманенность, зашоренность мозгов, то есть мы посреди там вселенной, тут огромные просторы, тысячи галактик там вокруг нас вертится, а, а мы вот, ну, я, скажем так, вот занят какими-то замороченностями, скажем так. Вопрос, как из этого лабиринта выходить. И еще раз огромное спасибо вам за ваши трансляции. Вот. Все.
Try harder, Alexei.
Спасибо.
Yes, Al.
I think people in the rainforest they serve ayahuasca ceremonies all over the world.
Uh-huh.
So they're pretty much aware of the remote presence.
Yes. Well, yes, those tribes certainly. Absolutely. There's still a couple scattered around that haven't gotten to the cell phone level yet. They're not.
Just coming and trying to wake them up.
Yeah.
So they are actually
Well,
worship.
some people,
Yeah.
others consider them drug dealers. Depends who you talk to. Yeah. Absolutely. Let's control this show. Absolutely. If the false, what we call the false sense of authorship is still alive, if it's still a possibility, it will arise and say, I want to control this thing. That's what it is. But that's what the doer is. The doer is the participator. When you're brushing your hair in the front of the mirror, you think, oh, I'm brushing my hair. You're the participator. You're the doer of that. But that there is generally not a sense of authorship accompanying them. No, you say, I've got to brush my hair. Yeah, I've got a tangle here. I need to brush my hair. And you recognize that I am brushing my hair. That's doing without authoring. You're not thinking, oh, the universe is brushing my hair. It's all part of the functioning of totality. You're brushing your hair. Yes and no. You can be not aware of it. I mean, there are lots of actions that you perform that you are not aware of, that there is no identification that I am doing it. You go through the day breathing, and most of the time, unless you're a yoga student, you're not even thinking about the fact that I'm breathing. So the breathing is going on, you're doing it, but there's no sense I am doing it. But many things during the day, you do have the sense that I am doing this. And it is those things that the false sense of authorship gets involved with. Then there's the claim that the I that is doing it is an independent entity, capable of doing it on its own. That's the sense. Yes, Alexa.
Уэйн, у меня вопросик по поводу этого примера с желанием расчесать волосы. То есть пришло действие расчесать волосы, да, и дальше уже я на него накладываю оценку, да, это сделал я, а действие просто случилось. И также у нас происходит, получается, со всеми, ну, происходящими событиями. То есть какое-то нам не нравится действие, мы накладываем оценку, это не должно было случиться, и это и есть страдание. Так получается? Или как?
Yes. you're correct that that is the pointer that we use.
А вопрос, например, могу отменить это действие? Он уже звучал, по-моему, сегодня в трансляции. Или же сначала действие происходит, а дальше уже происходит наша оценка? Тут вопрос еще в том, что могут нами править неосознанные инстинкты, и тогда это будет просто такой животный автоматизм. Как с этим быть, в этом путаница некая. И еще, потому что, ну вот даже мудрецы об этом говорят, что если бы вы были тотально осознанные, то вопроса этического вообще бы не возникало. То есть вы бы не могли плохое сделать. Просто из того, что, ну, это невозможно. Вот в этом. То есть понятно, что осознанность стопроцентная, она сложно достижима сейчас. Так вот, такая путаница. Ну, ладно.
I see that, Alexei.
Все, спасибо вам. Будем дальше разбираться.
I wish you the very best of luck.
Спасибо. Она нужна сейчас.
We all do. Yes, Sid.
Hi, Wayne. Just a quick something about this last bit of conversation. I found a book, a used book by author Richard Wagames, who's an Ojibwe First Nations writer here in Canada. And it was about his memoirs about what he's learned over the years and the traditions. And he has this ongoing dialogue with somebody he calls wise woman, who might probably be fiction, but there was something that wise woman said that reminded me, I was reminded by the recent conversations where she says, "You are not here to understand, you are here to participate." And that struck me because the need to understand sometimes I think is actually an obstacle in some ways.
All right, stop doing it then, Sid.
What's that?
Stop doing it.
Well,
You
I
don't want
might.
any obstacles, Sid.
What's that?
We don't want any obstacles. So stop doing it.
Okay, I will.
Okay.
All right, it's a deal.
All right.
Okay.
So in this teaching, we do use this term understanding in two ways, both as with a capital U, which is the transcendent understanding or presence or beingness, in which all is. And then there is understanding with a small u, which is the intellectual understanding. And so my observation is that some of us are put here on earth to seek intellectual understanding, and some of us achieve intellectual understanding. But that's really ultimately the booby prize. Are in our very essence, what is our nature, is this understanding with a capital U. And it is that which this teaching is here to point